Well, I guess I get to be the one to kind of try to reset our expectations or understanding about what the B word, right, blockchain is in 2019. Because I'm sure for many people here, we've heard, well, if we just put our elections on the blockchain, that'll solve all of our election problems. Or we put land titles on the blockchain, that'll solve all poverty problems, right? And I think it did generate over the last few years, not only, a lot of hype, obviously, and a lot of kind of both fortunes as well as perhaps some ruined fortunes. It created some unrealistic expectations. But behind the scenes, what a lot of people were doing was thinking about this underlying technology, right? Which was really all about doing, you could kind of say what Ronald Reagan said when he said, trust but verify, right? Which is, ordinary information systems, ordinary databases, ordinary web services that are modeled after a client-server or master-slave, sometimes the phrase is used, relationship, require us to trust somebody at the middle, right? Or somebody at the server, somebody at the other end of the connection, to really define for us what reality is, what truth is, right? And that has led to business models in Silicon Valley that are all about being at the center of a business ecosystem, to an Uber or a PayPal. Every venture capitalist wants to invest in the next 800-pound gorilla at the center of their market. Well, that might be fine if we're talking about microblogging or sharing baby photos. It's not fine when you're talking about the center of financial markets. It's not fine when you're talking about business processes that flow across jurisdictions, across regulatory regimes, and where you're really involving a multilateral, really consortium-based kind of approach. Now, I've lived most of my life in consortia. I have been a part of open source projects for a long time, which were always about bringing companies together to work together on common underlying open source code. And even when I worked at places like the World Economic Forum, which was kind of also an open source organization in a way, it pulls together companies to go and create IP, create ideas, create common business processes. All of this was about recognizing that you really need a community, right? You really need to find some way for collections of organizations to work together to create IP, to create business flows, that sort of thing. But the fundamental client-server world of the centralized technologies made that really hard to do. So enter Satoshi Nakamoto, who actually, building upon previous work in building decentralized systems and cryptography, said, here's a radically different approach to removing humans from the loop, right? From removing central organizations, removing perhaps the central banks from the financial flows, that sort of thing. And it planted a flag way over here, right? That was really useful from a technology point of view, from a semantics point of view, understanding how might we build cooperative systems where we can trust in the processes and sign each other's transactions and have witnesses and all that without needing a coordinating force up above to make that happen. Well, what's happened is between the traditional model and between Satoshi, there's a really rich field using a lot of this technology that has emerged. Instead of using the word blockchain, let's use distributed ledger technology. Let's use smart contracts. Let's figure out how we might take a trade finance network, for example, comprised of many different banks, comprised of regulators, comprised of shippers and sources, and look at implementing a common ledger to keep track of flows of goods and the extensions of letters of credit. Let's look at the diamond industry, where knowing where that diamond came from and the provenance behind it is really essential to knowing that you're not inadvertently supporting slave labor in a diamond mine or diamonds that had been used to purchase weapons, right? Let's look at education and healthcare, where keeping track of records that can be shared and automatically verified and credentialed is really essential so that people don't wake up one day and discover their academic history has been disappeared or their medical records are not able to be accessed. All of these are active projects now using technologies from many different organizations, but this underlying plumbing to build these blockchain networks. And there's many of them out there. In fact, we track over 150 different production blockchain networks out there today, all across all these different use cases that we mentioned. I think the biggest impact that we'll see is in reinventing the approach to digital identity, taking us out of the login with Facebook, login with Twitter, use your government credential ID in order to buy things online. There's a lot of very centralized systems out there in digital identity that simply don't meet the requirements of, say, providing identities to refugees in refugee camps who are starting their lives over again and need some way to bring their health and financial records with them. Lots of of good work being done. All of these technologies, the ones that really work, are open source. And so I'm happy to talk with anybody about where that technology is coming from. Thank you.